going to offer a research-based understanding of resiliency as it applies to leadership. We're going to share some practical tips and tools. And then we're going to engage in a live practice exercise for you to experience a reset to your nervous system. And who couldn't use that right now? And then finally, I will offer live coaching for those who choose to volunteer. And I hope you will, because we're going to have plenty of time for that. So I am curious about this question right now. How can we use this time of isolation, physical distancing and isolation from one another physically to shift our leadership capacity for the better? Because we are going to come out on the other side of this. We don't know when exactly things will return to what felt like a more normal way of living. And yet what we do know is that so much will be different when we do come out on the other side, that if we use this time to develop some new capacities for ourselves, it's going to pay off for us. So let's begin with a definition of what is leadership resilience. Leadership resilience is the ability to maintain equilibrium under pressure. We can't avoid uncertainty and the stress that can result from pressures. However, we can focus on what we can control. We can control our emotions, we can control our thoughts, and we can control how we engage with others. So now, as we begin, I'd like to invite each of you to let me know what you're bringing into this call today. So please type in the chat box one word that describes how you feel right now. Let me hear from all of you. Fatigue, uncertain. Who else? Who else would like to share? Slightly keyed up, scared. Yeah. Anxious. Tested. Yeah. Optimistic. All right. Curious. Nervous. What else? In limbo. Yes. Very much so. In limbo. So much uncertainty. Who else? Off balance. Yeah. Trying to figure out how to create some kind of structure or normalcy in what feels very abnormal. Hopeful. Thank you. Hopeful. Yes. Hopeful for so much that we're going to be able to learn during this time when everything that we knew is no longer available to us. Our patterns, our habits, our familiar comforts are not available for the most part. Yeah, thank you all so much. So you can see we're really all experiencing huge amounts of uncertainty, nervousness, anxiety, fear, off balance, feeling in limbo. And yet some folks are reporting that they're hopeful and optimistic. So that's what we're going to be working on, is how can we develop the mind habits to learn how to move ourselves from all of those more challenging emotions into the ones that will support us feeling better for now. So let's look at resilient leaders. What are the qualities of resilient leaders? They see failures as temporary setbacks that they can recover from quickly. They maintain positive attitudes and a strong sense of opportunity during periods of turbulence. And goodness knows we have plenty of that going on now. When faced with ambiguity, a resilient leader finds a way to move forward. They avoid getting stuck. And finally, many studies in the literature have indicated the importance of resilience as both an individual trait and a leadership trait. Now let's take a look at some research that was done by a company called Zenger Folkman. It was published back in 2017. And they created an assessment that measured resilience along with 9 other leadership competencies. They collected data from 500 leaders, and these assessments used ratings from peers, managers, and direct reports on 40 different leadership behaviors. They were exploring the impact of leaders who rated the highest on resilience. Those would be in the top 10%, and those who rated in the bottom of resilience, at the bottom 10%. And what we found is when they looked at ratings of overall leadership effectiveness, it is obvious that the most resilient leaders are viewed as the most effective leaders as well. So learning a little bit about resilience and how we can enhance our resilience is really going to help make you a more effective leader. So that brings us to the question, how can leaders show resilience? What are the 7 hallmarks of leadership resilience? So the first is the ability to communicate powerfully. So resilient leaders communicate their intentions to others. They help others understand a new direction, or perhaps even uncertainty about a direction, and yet a desired direction to move toward. They promote conversations that bring others along with them. So communicate, communicate, communicate. And even if you feel you've communicated more than you can possibly imagine, communicate some more. 2, resilient leaders are coachable. What does this mean? It means to be humble about what you know and about what you might not know. To maintain a strong desire to improve and to grow your skills. So we can do that by asking for feedback throughout our careers. And to be coachable, to be a learner. I'm often asked what makes for a good client, and I say someone who wants to learn, someone who's curious and open to learning. That's really it. 3, build positive, trusting relationships with others. Resilient leaders create strong teams. They build trust. They're open to the differences between people, and they don't let those differences get in the way of what it is they're trying to do and accomplish. Resilient leaders know that they need positive relationships with others in order to support their own change. And we're all going through so much change right now. So the question is, how can you lean on others, your colleagues, your family, your friends, to discuss and discover the changes that you are going through and get input on how you can address that in a more positive, co-creative way. 4, resilient leaders are bold risk takers. They're willing to take risks. They're willing to try new things and make bold changes. Because there is so much uncertainty now, pretty much everything we try is bold. Just as today, I decided to try hosting a Zoom webinar. That's bold for someone who has never done it. And the first time it didn't work so well, and I kept on going. You all can do the exact same thing. Put yourself out there and try something you've not ever tried before. Be bold, take a risk. You can learn, and you might be serving and helping others to learn as well. 5, develop others. The most resilient leaders are concerned about the welfare of other people. They're wanting to solicit honest feedback from other people, and they always offer productive feedback to others, constructive, productive feedback. It's challenging right now to think of focusing outward at times when just surviving can take so much of our energy right now. Being able to manage the activities of daily living can take up a lot of our hours of our day. And yet, if we focus on how we can be helpful to others, it will really, really benefit them, and it will also benefit us. We are wired for these kinds of human connections, and it's important that we do this now for our own well-being and for that of our communities. Number 6, champion change. Embrace change. Hey folks, it's all we've got right now. We're not going back. So this is what we've got to work with. We have to embrace where we are. Let's encourage others to embrace it. Let's create the future that we desire instead of focusing on how do we get back to the old way or the way things were before. I'm hearing from many clients that some of them may not want to go back to the old way. Some folks are appreciating the opportunity to work remotely. They're appreciating that they have fewer distractions. They're perhaps getting more focused. They're able to feel even more productive than when they were in offices with lots of people. Many clients are reporting the appreciation for sharing more time with family. And 7, be decisive. Resilient leaders are effective at making decisions and moving forward. If they make a wrong decision, they move in a different direction. They pivot. And I love this quote. I don't know who said it, but I found it. Swift and resolute action leads to success. Self-doubt is a prelude to disaster. We just have to take action. If it doesn't turn out, we can pivot. No one really knows what's going to work for us in this moment. We just have to try our best to stay in action and move more toward what it is we want and desire. So let's take a deep breath and just think about, how do we do that? This sounds good, but you're probably looking for some practical ideas and applications. So let's focus on creating a resilience toolbox today and filling it with tools that are going to assist you right now and that you can use and dig out and share over and over again throughout this pandemic experience. So number 1, the most important tool you have is managing your own energy. I'm going to invite you to develop a sense of your own presence, or perhaps lack thereof. Maybe you struggle with feeling present right now. You're distracted by all the news and the social media and all of the fear and the uncertainty, and it weighs on you. I read an article this morning that said that more and more people are describing very strong dreams that they are remembering now more than ever before. It's bringing up all of our collective sort of unconscious fears and anxieties, and many of us are reporting having very, very vivid dreams and remembering them. If you are in fear, your orientation, however, is around the future. So the way out of feeling so much fear is through a focus on the present moment. In order to do that, we have to learn how to manage our minds. So in a 2015 article published in the Journal of Management, they examined 4,000 scientific papers on mindfulness. And they concluded that mindfulness positively impacts human functioning at work overall. Specific improvements were shown in attention, cognition, emotions, behavior, and physiology. So in addition, mindfulness practices can improve our interpersonal behavior, our relationships, and all the processes that we engage with that rely on teamwork. Those of you who've worked with me know, because we do a lot of these exercises in our group work. Our brains are malleable. And I love this quote by Tara Swart, who is a neuroscientist and senior lecturer at MIT Sloan School of Management. She said, quote, "If you're a leader of a business, you're getting paid to use your brain. The fact that it's not seen as the single most important asset of the business leader is continually surprising to me," end quote. So we have to learn how to use this brain differently. Simple actions have been shown to enhance brain performance in ways that matter, and this is now being measured in many neuroscientific studies. In addition, mindfulness is a precursor to emotional intelligence, including self-regulation, self-awareness, motivation, and empathy. So by now, you could probably share with me the belief that mindfulness training for leaders is a critical skill. In fact, at a conference in London, at the Sky Media Leadership Conference, one of the presenters said, "The single most important skill you need to be able to lead well in the second half of your personal and professional life is the ability to develop a peaceful mind. And there you have it. We need to focus on learning to gain control of our busy minds. Instead of working harder, leaders can learn to make their brains work more efficiently and effectively. And as Tara Swart said, quote, with practices, your brain will be different in 6 months' time than it is right now. 3, we need to focus our attention on the present moment. The great teacher and author Eckhart Tolle said, quote, only when you leave this moment, fear arises as a thought form. So what is he trying to say? When you are worried about the future or have fear about the future, you are not in this moment. And your brain is now running on that fear, making it difficult to think clearly about anything else. What we need to do is learn to get ourselves to neutral. And we call that center, the place from which you have choice. When we do that, the fear subsides automatically. And you have the ability to respond instead of reacting. So what do I mean by this? I mean that we need as leaders to really bump up our practices and our abilities to develop a strong, centered presence. And we do that through practice. Now, I'm not advocating that you sit on a meditation cushion for hours every day. It's not necessary. What I am advocating is that you learn proper technique to develop a centered presence, ways that work for you and times that work for you to continue to utilize this throughout your day, bringing yourself back to the present moment. So what I'd like to do right now is to take everyone through an exercise of centering so that you can experience it for yourselves. And then we're going to have a bit of a discussion about what you experienced and noticed. So I'm going to invite you all to come to the edge of your chair. And in order to have your spine be straight and erect, I ask you to place your sits bones towards the edge of the chair. And in this way, your vertebrae will be stacked one on top of the other as if you are stacking the dishes in your kitchen cabinet. This will allow energy to the top of your head, to your crown. And then just roll shoulders back a few times. Everybody's so tense right now this time of day. We've been hunched over screens and on phones, tablets, probably haven't been much in the cars, but we probably have some tension in the shoulder girdle in the neck area. So just pulling the shoulders up to the ears and rolling them backwards, maybe one and then the other a few times, allows us to begin to release some of that contracted muscle stuff that goes on up in there. And that's where many of us carry our attention throughout the day. Oh, just notice how different that feels. And now place your feet firmly on the floor. And I'm going to ask you to just feel your feet right now. Just place your attention on your feet and feel them touching the floor. Yeah? And so now, with your eyes open, let's just all together just take a big inhalation, inhaling through the nose and exhaling through the mouth. Just notice how that feels, that settling in moment. Yeah? So the biggest misconception around centering or mindfulness practice is that you need to or we're not going to be able to stop them. So the idea is not to try to stop them. The idea is to allow them to pass as if they are clouds across the sky and to become the observer or the witness of the thoughts, where you are not getting hooked by the thoughts as they're passing through your brain, but they're just coming and going like the clouds on a beautiful sunny day passing across the sky. Yeah? So there's no right or wrong way. Is if we focus on our breath, we will become fully absorbed in the breathing itself. And in so doing, the thoughts begin to go back into the background of the mind, and they're no longer capturing our attention. So let's try it together, all right? So we're going to simply close our eyes just for a few minutes, and we're going to inhale through the nose and just allow yourself to pull breath in through your belly. Sort of imagine a straw, perhaps 2 inches below your belly button, and you're sipping air through that straw. If you do so, the belly's going to inflate. And pull that breath all the way up into the lung. And then when it gets all the way up to the top of the lung, simply hold that breath for about 4 counts. And now begin to release the breath from the top of the lung and imagine it, visualize it going down from the top of the lung through the base of the lung into the top of the belly and then down into the abdomen, and it finally exits that tiny hole 2 inches below the belly button where the straw is. Just let the air out. Again, inhaling through the nose and inflate the belly as you pull the breath in through the straw. Belly's getting big and wide and expanding. Feel the breath going up into the top of the lung. And it finally hits the top, and hold the breath for a count of 4. And now begin to release the breath and see if you can allow your breath release, exhale, to be longer than the one before. Inhaling through the nose, pulling the breath in through the belly, inflating the belly, expanding it fully, bringing the breath up into the lung, fully oxygenating your body with fresh red blood cells. And now release the breath slowly. See if you can hold it for 6 or 7 counts before it goes out through the tiny hole where the straw is. And by now, you should be starting to absorb yourself in the pure sensation of your body, just noticing the coolness of the air as it enters your nostrils, noticing sensations in the body. Just becoming aware of your experience without labeling it, without judging it. Just observe it. Dropping deep into sensation. Feeling yourself becoming more and more relaxed. The thoughts begin to fade away. And you're dropping into a sense of feeling fully in your body and simply only noticing the sound of your own breath. I'm going to be quiet for the next minute and allow you to simply sit in this breathing pattern in silence and enjoy it. And now take another inhalation and exhalation at your own pace. Perhaps letting go of the exhale with a sigh. Just cleanse the body of all the toxic energy that might have accumulated so far today. And begin to wiggle your feet. You allow your toes to move across the floor, your hands and wrists, fingers. And soft eyes, just slowly open your eyes and maintain this soft gaze for the rest of our time together today. So I'd like to hear from some of you in the chat box. What was this experience like for you? Perhaps, how do you feel now? Unique, refreshed, reoriented. I love it. Relaxing, peaceful, more relaxed, more calm. Beautiful, beautiful. Keep them coming, folks. This is really powerful stuff. I can hear all the noises outside, calm. Yes, I'm hearing all the birds right now. They're very active. Beautiful. Yeah. Basking, open mind, calming. Yes. Who else hasn't shared? Beautiful. So you see, this was just a few minutes of the day. We haven't sat on cushions for hours. We were just doing this for a few minutes, and look at the difference in how you all are reporting feeling. So this is available to you. I want to share with you what's happening in your physiology so you understand the science behind this. In centering, you're activating your parasympathetic nervous system. It calms the mind. You're able to access your higher intelligences. It is an essential practice for modern leaders. What happens is you enter what we call the no stress zone. If you stay here long enough, you will have no thought. There will be no start and no finish, no shape, no borders. Time will disappear. You will disappear. And you have now become the witness and not the judge. Can you think about how impactful this can be for you as a leader, to have this capacity to become a witness and not a judge? I want to hear from you. How might you use that capacity in your interactions with folks with whom you work? Type that into the chat box. If you were able to become an observer of a high stakes situation, or one where there was conflict, and not be drawn into the conflict, but rather be able to be a witness to it and to respond, how could that be helpful? Yes, if I am calm, my employees will be calm. Yes, they're feeling your energy. They're taking their lead from what you are sharing. Thanks so much. Allows me to pause and to think more neutrally. Yes, and empathy. It very much increases our capacity to have empathy, to have compassion for others, because we're not caught in our reactive minds. Yeah, very good. Thank you so much for these wonderful comments. So here's what's really happening. We have two components in our nervous system. Oh, some other folks popped in. No matter how I feel, I speak confidently and optimistically. No judgment, forward thinking. Thank you so much. Yes, yes, yes. So let's look at what's happening. So our bodies have a nervous system that has two components, a sympathetic and a parasympathetic. In the sympathetic dominant nervous system, which is what is activated when we feel highly stressed, like right now during this pandemic, we are basically taxing our sympathetic nervous systems. Sympathetic nervous system, typically we are activating our left brain activity. It's the part of our nervous system that allows us to engage in action in the world. It's where we encapsulate our logical, rational, linear thinking. So typically when we are awake, we are activating our sympathetic nervous systems. It also accumulates stress. So if we live in constant sympathetic nervous system mode, our nervous systems are continually hijacked. And this is not a good thing. It is not healthy. It promotes the active use of cortisol, which causes lots of issues with our adrenals, as well as our neurotransmitters that can get shot when there's too much cortisol being pumped into the body without release. So this overly active sympathetic nervous system is the root cause of many of the diseases that ail us. Also, about the sympathetic nervous system, it is primarily what's activated when we have beta brainwave. That's our conscious active alert time. So let's contrast this with sympathetic. Parasympathetic is when we are consciously relaxed, as you just were. It is the part of the system that is activated when we are in our right brain. The right brain is the creative, visualization, intuitive, receptive part of our brain. It's where discoveries come from. It's where innovation comes from. It is impossible to feel anxiety when the body's relaxed. I didn't see anyone in the chat box noting that they felt anxious. This is because you were activating your parasympathetic nervous system on your own terms. And what this does is it gives you access to the state of feeling and being, contrasted to acting and doing. We need both. So choice is the way out. You see, living in this chronic alert or fear or stress is a choice. We can't control the fact that this pandemic is here or how long it's going to last. What we can control is the impact that this pandemic has on us and on our bodies. And that's the part we have to bind together to do and to support one another in doing. As I said earlier, this excess use of beta brainwaves creates an imbalance in the body. When you are in your parasympathetic nervous system, the alpha brainwaves are activated. Those are the brainwaves that typically we see when we are asleep. Only in centering and mindfulness practices, you are doing that while you are awake. If we were to enter deep conscious meditation, we could potentially engage with theta and even delta brainwaves. The good news is that this polarity naturally lives inside of us, not outside of us. And by polarity, I mean this balance between the parasympathetic and the sympathetic. It's inside of us. We were designed as human beings to have access to both. So we want to eliminate the habits that we have accumulated in our lives that force us to the extremes of this polarity scale. We don't have to live in this sympathetic nervous system hijack. Instead, we can allow ourselves to simply be. And if nothing else, what this pandemic is doing, it is allowing us to slow down and simply be. Many of us have no idea how to do that. So this is my sun system. Step up now, where being and feeling precede acting and doing. It's enhanced by timeless and effective Eastern wisdom traditions that are over 5,000 years old and have been proven by many, many neuroscientific studies to actually work and deliver returns. We can access choice via a centering practice, and we can learn to respond instead of react. Okay, so before we go on to the next section of our presentation, I'm questioning, I want to see if there are any questions from folks that I could answer about what we've covered so far. Just type any questions you have into the Q&A box, and Carissa will unmute herself and let me know who to call on, and then she will unmute you. Any questions? so far before we go into the next section?
None yet, but it probably gives them, I think we give them a little bit yet to get typed in.
Yep. Thank you. Thanks so much, Carissa.
And you can
Okay.
either ask the questions, or if you want to ask and come on with the mic, those are the two different options.
Yeah. I don't see anyone so far. Has anyone signed up to have a question so far? If not, we will have time for questions at the end.
Nope, none yet.
All right, so let's talk about what we can do to take care of ourselves. I have noticed that this is a time where I need to lean into my self-care practices even more. As challenging as it can be, we have to focus on caring for ourselves. If we don't do well, no one around us is going to do well or feel well. So the first is adequate rest. And for many people who do not have a sleep hygiene ritual, I'm going to recommend this be a time that you develop one, because most likely you're not getting up to drive care of developing some new rituals around getting to sleep and getting enough sleep. Make sure that you're sleeping in a cool, dark room with no electronic devices or what we call blue light emissions. Blue light is emitted from any kind of a screen, a digital clock, a phone, a television, or tablet. So if you have any of those devices in your bedroom, they need to be covered in the night. Cover them with a sheet or a cloth or a tablecloth, because they emit what are called EMGs, and those actually in scientific studies have been shown to interfere with sleep patterning, okay? Better yet, keep your cell phones in another room when they're charging and nowhere near your head or near your night table, okay? The second thing is limit news access. This is where a lot of people are getting trapped. They're checking the news and their social media feeds constantly. And this is going to hijack that sympathetic nervous system and make cortisol flood your body throughout the day. You want to limit those cortisol jolts as much as you can. So I'm inviting you to consider once or at most twice a day of checking news and social media posting, and certainly not anywhere near bedtime. Aim to have your devices off 1 hour before you want to be asleep. Okay? In terms of food, really focus your intake on healthy whole foods, foods that come from the earth, that are not processed, reducing intake of sugar and fatty or processed foods. I know it isn't easy right now. Do the very best that you can to eliminate all those extra chemicals that put a lot of strain on your body to digest. Next is stay really hydrated. I've read some studies that show that the virus cannot live in a well-hydrated environment. So getting dry and dehydrated is not good. Drink at least 6 or 7 glasses of water a day. And if you're exercising, of course, more. Try to steer clear of too much caffeine, and of course, no sugared sodas or artificially sugared drinks. We need sunlight right now. We need exposure to sunlight and vitamin D. Those also strengthen and boost immunity. So make sure you're getting out every day, morning, midday, end of the workday, several times a day for 15 or 20 minutes is even better than once, to get your vitamin D and sunlight exposure. And I hope this doesn't need to be repeated, but I'm going to say it anyway. The importance of exercising. We need to move our bodies even more now, because when we're moving, we are not stuck. And it's repetitive thinking patterns and emotional patterns to lodge in a body that is immobile. So the more you're moving, any kind of movement, the better you're going to feel. It causes you to stimulate new neurotransmitter, not new, but neurotransmitter endorphins will get going. In between any rigorous exercise that you're doing or workouts, be sure to walk, bike, or run outdoors, or swim if you live where I live. Do something every single day that brings you joy, whatever that is for you. Any hobby. If you don't have a hobby, pick up a new hobby, something you've always wanted to explore. Feel good about something you're doing for yourself each and every day. This is really going to help. And last, but certainly not least, increase your social connections. Make sure that you're reaching out daily to check in on others. I have to say that I have become a Zoom maven in the last 3 weeks and have been setting up at least 4 to 5 Zoom calls every weekend with friends around the world and in other parts of the United States, and regular chats with family, and hosting these kinds of calls is really bringing me a lot of joy. It's not the same as being in person, but it's what we have, and it certainly does allow us to stay connected and to share what we are all experiencing and dealing with right now. So now the question is, what are your resilience practices going to be? I'm going to invite you to consider some of my favorites, and we'll talk about what you might consider in a few moments. One, it's very important to cultivate a gratitude practice. So I'm inviting you to write down daily 3 things that you are grateful for. It could be in the morning prior to getting into your day, or at the end of the day, just as you're winding down, getting ready for your nighttime routine. Express gratitude to your family verbally once a day for something specific. It will cause you to become mindful and to note how much you have to be grateful for right now. This is going to really help you feel better. And third, notice how what you focus on increases. Next, I'd like you to consider an affirmation. An affirmation can be very helpful because anything we repeat actually conditions the mind. It creates new neural pathways. So when we retell the same stories, and fear, which is why we want to tell ourselves new stories that actually decondition our minds. So put your mind at ease by breathing slowly and purposefully, and consider one of the following. I am whole, I am well. Or everything is exactly as it should be. Or this too shall pass, nothing is permanent. Perhaps let's hear from some of you who might be willing to share an affirmation that you would find helpful so that we could learn from you. I'm curious, does anyone have a potential affirmation for us to learn from? Type it in the chat box, please. No one yet so far. God loves me. Yes. Yes. Relaxing into that knowing. Yes. Beautiful. Anyone else? Any other potential affirmations that would be soothing and nourishing to your bodies and brains? Today is going to be a great day. Yes. Don't worry, be happy. Yes. Thank you so much. These are so positive. So if you find yourself getting triggered by what is going on outside, lean into that affirmation. In this moment, all is well enough. Yes. Beautiful. These are so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing. So come up with your own. Come up with one that works for you and change them out. They don't have to be the same ones every day. Focus on what you know. If you check in with your body, it will tell you what it needs to hear from you. 3, I'm going to invite you to really get serious about a centering practice. Start small and work up. Just begin with 2 minutes. Do it daily, at least when you get worked up, at least 10 minutes twice a day. By the time you've built up your stamina. But 2 minutes, you'll already feel some benefit. Just get going, get in gear. Don't try to stop your thoughts. Just focus on your breath and on the sensations you're experiencing in the body. Consider journaling or writing what might be shifting in your experience. This in and of itself can help you learn what this practice is doing for you. I can promise you that if you do it, you will notice things shift. It will activate your parasympathetic nervous system, and who couldn't use more of that right now? It will calm your mind. It will allow you to access your higher intelligences. And as I've said before, I believe it is an essential practice for modern leaders. Now, I know that some of you will want access to some resources online because some of you are very tech savvy. So I've compiled a list of some of my favorites, and they are going to be put up in the chat box. Carissa's going to have all the links available for you. Or you can take a photo of this slide. They are here because they are high quality. Many of them are free, or at least free to start, so you can test them out. And many of them have paid subscriptions as well, but they all have vast amounts of information and content by many different providers who can assist you until you find some that resonate with you. I would encourage you to watch the Science of Mindfulness Meditation YouTube video. It's about 7 or 8 minutes. I think it's no more than 10 minutes. It's one of those little whiteboard drawings, and it explains the science of it so simply and clearly. And I think when you see it, it will really resonate for you how valuable this is because of how it works on your mind. Okay, so now's our time for sharing. If you have a question and you would like to interact with me, please raise your hand in the Q&A and Carissa will unmute you so that we can engage. Would like to receive coaching on any concern or topic that you are challenged by right now, let us know that as well. And if you give me permission to coach you, I would be happy to do that as well. So we have a few minutes for some sharing and some potential live volunteer coaching. So I'll give you a second to pull together what it is that you'd like from this call that would make it more useful to you.
Not seen any yet.
Okay. Give you about another 15 or 20 seconds, and then if no one has any sharing, I have a few more resources I'd be happy to share, and then we'll begin to wrap up. Okay. All right, so I don't think last call, anyone having any desire to share or interact or engage, now's your moment. We're gonna move right into the final.
We have one in.
Okay, if you feel an episode coming on, what would be the first few steps to dealing with that? So could you say a bit more about an episode? What kind of an episode? Could you unmute him, please, Carissa? I'd like to hear from him. Sort of uneasiness. Okay, so it shows up somewhere in your body. So first I would invite you to get in touch with where in your body, in your physical body, you start to feel the sensations of uneasiness. That's the first thing. So when you've identified that uneasiness and where it lives in the body, then you'll be able to work with it differently. For some of us, this uneasiness shows up in clenched jaws, sweaty palms, fluttering heart, butterflies in the belly. Sometimes people describe difficulty breathing. Yeah. So we all have a place in our body and our physiology where our uneasiness lives. So the first thing is notice where it lives. And then place your attention on that place in the body and breathe deeply into that area with those slow inhalations and even longer exhalations. And what we begin to notice is when we slow the breath down, the edges of that discomfort begin to melt. This is a technique that comes from yoga, and it's called going to the edge. And what we do is we just actually go to the edge of the discomfort in the posture, and we use the breath to transcend the physical pain. And I think what you'll notice is that as you're doing that, the body's reaction to the distress starts to soften. I hope that's helpful. Could you please let us know if that answered your question? You're very welcome. Okay. So in conclusion, sorry?
Go ahead. I said I don't see any others.
And no others. Okay, good. So in conclusion, we can't control what's happening around us, yet we can control what's happening inside of us. So that when we come out on the other side of this pandemic, we will be wiser, stronger, more compassionate, more connected, and more purposeful and effective than ever before. So now I'm going to invite you to participate in a quick 3-question poll, which Carissa is going to launch, and it will help me gauge whether this has been useful, and if so, if there would be interest in having others on other topics, I can learn from you all what would be supportive. Would you please launch the poll, Carissa? Thank you.
I clicked launch and it's showing up for me, but it's not showing up as for the panelists or for the attendees.
Huh. Not showing up. Well, we have to love Zoom. We did practice many times and it did work at one point and it's not working now. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to ask you to type into the chat box. Yeah. How useful was today's webinar for you? Could you type in your response to how useful it was? Very useful, somewhat useful, or not useful at all? I really need to hear whether you're getting value from it. Thank you. Aw, thank you so much. Yeah, nice. Okay. It's looking as if folks are finding it very useful, so that's really thrilling for me. So if I were to consider doing another webinar during the COVID epidemic this month, what would be the frequency that you all would find helpful? Would you be looking for once a week, twice a month, once a month? Give me some sense of the frequency that you would be able to, there it goes. How likely are you to attend a future webinar? There we go. Good. Let's see. We're going to let it go for about 30 seconds. Good. All right. Thank you. All right. And then there's one final question. I think there were 3. I seem to recall there were 3. I guess there's the frequency. There we go. Yep. Perfect.
Yay, they're working.
They're working. They're finally working. Yay. All right. Good. I'll let this go for about 30 seconds till everyone gets logged in. All right, great. Thank you so much, Carissa. So I think we can end the polling. And I want to share my final slides. Let's just see if we can get that moved out. There we go. If you would like any more resources, you can visit my website and click on the link to sign up for my weekly email leadership tips and tools. I'll be writing about all these kinds of things, including other things that you can do to help you through the COVID pandemic. You can order my book on Amazon, www.stepupleader.com/book. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. You can connect with me on Twitter. You can connect with me on, well, not really Facebook. I don't really connect on Facebook too much anymore, but we can find ways to connect, or you can call me. So it's been such an honor and delight to share this time and space with each and every one of you. I thank you so much for your participation. It's really meant the world to me to be able to be in service to leaders who are really so important to the way in which we are going to come through this. Each one of you is a leader, and you have the ability to influence so many people through the ways in which you show up in your daily life and in the teams that you lead. So I invite you to step up. I invite you to connect. And thank you. Have a fantastic weekend, everyone. Stay safe and be well. Bye-bye.